have the Ayatollah of fantasy rock and roller with us today, Adam Rank. How you doing, Rank?
They look great in person, and I just can't wait till next year where we can pack it full of 25,000.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I didn't know it was Ball Guys Day. It was being ranked. I mean, how can you lose?
This is the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast.
Hello and welcome to the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast, powered by the Fantasy Points Media Group. This is episode 180, and we are now on the Behind the Grind series, episode 5 of the 2023 season. As always, I am joined by Tara Roberts, and our guest this week is a fantasy analyst for the NFL Network at NFL.com. He's previously had work featured on SiriusXM, the Associated Press, The Athletic, and many more publications. Please welcome Micheal F. Florio. The F is for fantasy. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing great. I think I need you to kind of just follow me around and introduce me to places because you did a great job there.
I can do that. I can talk really well most times, as long as I don't have to actually read it off a sheet, because my reading leaves a little bit to be desired. Tara, she's been busy. It's draft season. I know you're busy with draft season. And you did a little bit of a mock draft here with the Roto Ballers. So one thing I want to get into is because everyone's got the mock draft season going on. And it's fun because one of the funnest things I think about when we hit this mock season is we like to think we know what we want. We like to pretend that we know what we want. But really, we have no clue what's going on when it comes to the NFL, because the draft is one of the craziest things out there. And it's always like we feel we have some kind of pull in the media and social media how these NFL teams are going to draft. Hey, you should draft this guy because A, B, and C. They've already got everything plus information that we don't have at our disposal. So when we look at Florio's 2023 NFL first round mock draft over on rotoballer.com, what are some of the bigger fantasy implications that you have in this draft?
I think the biggest thing, and I don't know if it'll shake out the way that I have it in real life, but I do think it impacts real life more than anything. This draft starts and ends with the quarterbacks, in my opinion. Last year, only one quarterback in the first 3 rounds. Kenny Pickett. It's not going to be like that at all. I think this year's draft, I don't know if we'll ever get a year quite like a few years ago where we had Lawrence and Fields and Lance and Wilson and it was like, hey, are the first 5 picks going to be quarterbacks? But in my mock draft, the first 3 picks are all quarterbacks. I have 4 in the top 7. I have 5 going in round 1. So I think the QB position, this is going to be a fun draft for fantasy because the quarterback position shakes everything up, and I think it's going to shake a lot up in the draft.
Well, let's talk about those quarterbacks, because we recently did our little draft, and I had CJ Stroud going first overall to Carolina, just because he's got the size and he doesn't have the rawness of the other 2 quarterbacks. And then you go Bryce Young, and then you went Anthony Richardson, which I think a lot of people have going on there. We're hearing Bryce Young canceling visits, so he's got to feel that he's going top 2 no matter what, either Carolina or to the Houston Texans. We know Houston loves him. We know that Carolina management has a thing for the analytics, which Bryce Young checks off on all those. But Frank Reich has a specific type of quarterback that he likes, which is maybe the Ohio State quarterback. So kind of just talk about how you went with these 3 quarterbacks, how you rank them for fantasy as well.
So in my mock draft, I went Stroud, Young, and then I had the Colts trading up for 3 to take Anthony Richardson. For fantasy, I have the rankings the exact opposite of that. But much like you, Matt, Look, I know everything, the betting market, everything now is pointing towards most mock drafts have Bryce Young going first overall. And the only thing that's giving me pause is the S2 testing scores, which feels a little dirty that the results have been released. But Bryce Young doing better than anyone ever has on that test, where CJ Stroud, 18% really struggled. If the reported numbers are correct, who knows? I kind of feel like the public shouldn't know that information, but that's a different discussion for a different day. That's the only thing giving me real pause. I cannot shake the fact that at the Combine and at the Pro Days, the way the Carolina brass was around CJ Stroud. Like, they were walking around CJ Stroud like they're Turtle and Johnny Drama, and CJ Stroud is Vincent Chase. Like, they were around him like they were all like he's already been drafted, and You had Josh McCown being like, when you come to Charlotte, we're going to get you on a basketball court. We got to play horse and stuff. And then they saw Bryce Young and they were like, hey, how are you? You doing good? Okay. And like, to me, I was like, it really seems like they had already made up their mind. And the Panthers can say everything they want. They don't know who they want at 1. They might trade that pick, blah, 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 blah. You don't give up all the capital that you gave up to make the move to number 1 unless you know who your guy is. So maybe I'm wrong and they do go Bryce Young, but for the last like 2 months have been like, no, CJ Stroud is their guy. And I've been sticking to that. I have Bryce Young going 2nd overall. I also don't believe the Texans that they are not taking a quarterback at 2. I think we know that is what they greatly need to do. And then Anthony Richardson, I love the fit with the Colts. If they were able to make the move up to 3, their head coach just worked with Jalen Hurts, and I think Anthony Richardson is a similar talent. I'm not saying he is Jalen Hurts, but that dual threat ability, I think he would immediately join Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields. Jalen Hurts is the best rushing quarterbacks. And for fantasy, I'd actually rank them Richardson, Young, Stroud because of the rushing ability. I say it all the time. Justin Fields last year threw 17 touchdown passes and less than 3,000 yards, and in many metrics was the worst thrower of the football in the NFL. And he was still amazing for fantasy because what he gave you with his legs. So Anthony Richardson, from the moment he starts, he is QB1 upside.
Yeah.
Could they play a devil's advocate here? Say we see Bryce Young go number 1, okay, in that world to Carolina because of those S2 scores. And then we're sitting here at pick number 2 with the Houston Texans. Could they possibly consider Anthony Richardson here over CJ Stroud simply because of maybe some past history of dealing with some certain agents of certain quarterbacks that have been in that room? Could that be something that potentially could play a factor?
I think so, because for all the upside that I'm saying that Anthony Richardson brings for fantasy, I think he brings the most upside in real life. And the way I've kind of broke down this quarterback class is I think CJ Stroud is the safest. His ball placement, his accuracy, all of that is off the charts good. There's concerns like he struggled under pressure. He had the most optimal situation you could play in college. I think he's the safest, though. I think Anthony Richardson brings the highest ceiling, and I think Bryce Young is the right combination of floor and ceiling. But yeah, if the S2 scores are scaring people away, because to me, my thinking is it's more likely the Texans would take Anthony Richardson over CJ Stroud than they would just punt on the quarterback position altogether.
Can I call attention real quick to Matt? Can I call attention real quick to his pick number 16 for the Commanders, Dalton Kincaid, just because I feel that one's timely. We actually had we're gonna call it an argument, a disagreement in our core group the other day on our show over this exact same pick, Dalton Kincaid to the Washington Commanders. I see a lot of people just generally in chats with mock drafts look at the tight ends and they say it's ridiculous to draft a tight end in the first, but I'm with you that there's a couple of teams who realistically here could take a tight end in the first round, and I think Washington is one of them, and Dalton Kincaid does make sense.
Yeah, he is my top ranked tight end. I think he brings the right combination. Like, he has good hands. He's a good route runner. He's explosive. He's a playmaker. Lots of stuff to like about Dalton Kincaid. And the only thing I think working against him and many of the other top tight ends in this class is that this is arguably the best tight end class maybe ever in quite some time, at least. I know Daniel Jeremiah, who I rely on a lot when it comes to this stuff. He says there's like 10 or 11 tight ends that he thinks are have the starting capabilities of an NFL tight end. So that's the only thing I think working against him. The Commanders, though, like Logan Thomas, Jordan Reed, they have long had very talented tight ends who just couldn't stay on the field, so they never got the production out of them. And I think you look at it, you pair Kincaid with a Terry McLaurin, with a Curtis Samuel, with a Jahan Dotson. Now you have a full year to be like Sam Howell. If they think that, if they're comfortable with him being the guy this year, you have a full year of Sam Howell to just play, to evaluate him, and there's no excuses because he's got all the help in the world then and all the playmaking around him. So I think Kincaid goes in the first round, and the issue is finding the team that is the one to do it. And I agree with you, Tara. I think the Commanders are one that just makes sense.
There you have it. Like every week, Major is wrong once again. Thank you for that
Had to do it 'cause he's
clarification on
not
that.
here.
Exactly. I mean, it's easy to pick on Major when he's not here. We do it when he's here, so it doesn't really surprise him when he watches his back. Now, when we turn our attention to the wide receiver position there, you got Jackson Smith and Jigba there going at 12, Zay Flowers at 21 to the Chargers. Minnesota Vikings select Jordan Addison at 23. And then you got to go down a little bit further before we find the Bills selecting Quentin Johnson, which this has got to be a personal pick for you as a Bills homer of sorts, putting away that homerism just for a little bit. How do you see these 4 wide receivers shaking out as wide in fantasy? Because anyone you talk to, they can switch these 4 wide receivers in any particular order. I think it's really dependent on what a team is looking for specifically. So when you look at these 4 wide receivers, how do you have them ranked for fantasy moving forward in these positions that you've got them going?
So in real life, I have it Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. I go back and forth on those last 2 though. But if they were to land how I have them, you could call me a homer. I would put Quentin Johnston number 1 for fantasy purposes. He's getting to play with Josh Allen. He's getting to play opposite of Stephon Diggs. I think that him and Gabe Davis would make a natural rotation there because last season the Bills had the lowest percentage of yards come after the catch. And I know Quentin Johnston, big-bodied receiver, we don't typically expect that out of him. He is the best yards after the catch receiver in this class. And not only is he so big and fast and elusive, but he puts himself in a position. What jumped out at me when I was watching him, when he goes up to catch the ball, sometimes it leads to him dropping the ball. He has concentration drop issues, but before he even catches the ball, he's already positioning his body so that when he lands, he hits a quick spin move. He's past the first defender and then he's out. So I think because of the offense that he would get to play in and the targets that I think would be up for grabs, I would put him number 1. But I still think JSN is number 2 for me. I'm a big fan of his talent. I think he's my number 1 wide receiver heading into this class. You put him on the Texans with another rookie quarterback, it's a little bit different than catching passes from Josh Allen. And then I would put Zay Flowers 3rd in that grouping, and then Jordan Addison 4th. Zay Flowers, I think, brings more upside than Jordan Addison at those landing spots, but Addison is safer because I think the volume is a little bit safer. I just think that Justin Herbert is an upgrade. I think that Zay Flowers is more explosive, which tends to translate to more production in fantasy a little bit easier. But, yeah, you could call me a homer. Whichever one of these guys was catching passes from Josh Allen would probably be the one that I'd put highest in these landing spots.
And then just 2 more football things, because you had Will Levis going to the Raiders there at pick number 7. And we talked about Dalton Kincaid going to the Washington Commanders there at 16. Well, you have the Commanders trading back in and getting Hendon Hooker, who's another one of those fancy names that could sneak back into the first round. So it might not be Sam Howell throwing passes to Kincaid for very long. But then you get it interesting because I love how this breaks down, because we broke this down as well with Bijan Robinson going to 26 to the Dallas Cowboys. And then you've got Jahmyr Gibbs sliding in with the Kansas City Chiefs at pick number 31. If it goes down like this, does Gibbs close that gap in fantasy on Bijan Robinson?
Yes. Yeah. I look, I think Bijan is the best running back to enter in quite some time. He is my RB1, but I'm hoping he is not on the board at 26, because if he is, Jerry Jones is going to go full Jerry, in my opinion. When he took CeeDee Lamb, let's not forget that they had Amari Cooper on the roster. They had just acquired Randall Cobb. They had Michael Gallup. And it was the last thing they need is another receiver. But he was this guy's the best player available. He's going to make our team more explosive. I want him. That's what I fear the thinking will be with Bijan Robinson. And what I wrote in my mock is right now, Bijan in best ball drafts is a top 5 running back off the board, which you're paying the absolute ceiling price for. But Tony Pollard is still a top 10 running back. If they were to draft Bijan, I think both of them fall, but they still both go as top 15 running backs off the board because there's too much upside with either of them. And then it just becomes a headache week to week. And it's is it going to be like last season where most of the groundwork goes to Bijan like Zeke was getting, but Pollard still gets his, and then I really want to avoid this situation because if they're on separate teams, they can both be potentially top 5 fantasy running backs. Jahmyr Gibbs, though, I put this idea in my head a couple of weeks ago, and I cannot shake it, that I think the Chiefs are going to take him if he falls to them. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is everything the Chiefs were hoping CEH could have been for them. And then just look at this past season without Tyreek Hill, right? CEH starts the year off on fire, but he's putting up like 30 yards per game. It was because of all the touchdowns he was getting at the goal line, especially in the receiving game. Then Jerick McKinnon goes on to break the running back record for most consecutive games with a receiving touchdown. Then he's a dynamic weapon for them, not only in this last playoff run, but the playoff run before that for them. I think they want an explosive pass-catching running back. And you bring in Jahmyr Gibbs, who is way more explosive than McKinnon or CEH ever were. And I think Isaiah Pacheco gets overhyped personally, but I think a Gibbs and Pacheco backfield makes a lot of sense. Gibbs could get his 8 to 12 carries, something like that, but then he's getting all the pass game snaps and targets and everything out of the running back position, whereas Pacheco is your hammer. He's the one that's putting a beating on the guys between the tackles and taking those short yardage touches and stuff like that. It could be what the Giants had in Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw all those years ago, just even better, I think. Like, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is that explosive and that good. And I know he's 199 and people have all these size concerns. Give that dude the ball in space, which he would easily get on the Chiefs, and he has RB1 potential from day one.
Yeah, I think that kind of works out. I like how you mentioned that because Pacheco and Gibbs would have good fantasy value, and Bijan Robinson there, even Tony Pollard would still maintain good value in the Dallas Cowboys system the way that breaks down. We've seen how Elliott and Pollard kind of work together in the past. Now, before we go into our featured segment here of Behind the Grind, with draft season upon us, make sure to check out the Fantasy Points Prospect Guide over at fantasypoints.com. Brett Whitfield does an excellent job breaking down each prospect ahead of the NFL draft, from strengths and weaknesses to rookie rankings. We have you covered at fantasypoints.com. That all being said, it's time to go behind the grind with Michael Florio. Now, I don't want people to get Michael Florio confused with Mike Florio, who actually has me blocked on Twitter for reasons. Actually, I know why. Let's be honest. I do know why I'm blocked. It might have had something to do with a toupee comment that I made once upon a time. That being said, do you know if anyone has you blocked, Mike, on Twitter, on any social media platforms? Do you have that privilege of knowing that?
The only person we have that in common. I'm not blocked by him, but he doesn't like me. Because of the name that I clearly chose to have. But the only person that I could think of that I know blocked me is someone who used to troll me. Like, I don't know them in real life or anything, but they used to troll me all the time. And then one time I responded back, and then they blocked me. And I was like, I guess that's a good thing for me that I don't have to deal with them anymore. But that is the only time I've ever, like, gone to click a tweet and it's like, no, you're blocked. Like, because I'm someone who I don't try to attack others' work. Like, I see a lot of stuff on fantasy Twitter where I'm like, I don't agree with this, or like, why would you choose to tweet this? But I keep it moving. I don't like to attack people's takes and stuff. I more so like to try to build people up. And it happened just a couple of days ago where, like, someone attacked a friend of mine in the industry. I tweeted in defense of this person. The person then kind of came back at my tweet, and I was like, no, I'm not going to respond to this because I don't want to get in the mud and stuff like that. I just want to build people up. So I don't know if that's the answer you were hoping for, but I don't think I'm blocked by a whole lot of people.
It's just hurtful because I know a lot of people retweet PFF's tweets and also our PFT's tweets and whatnot. And I'm like, I can't see it. You know, it's like the cone of shame I have to throw on my head because I don't know what I'm assuming it had something to do with what I said, but I don't. It wasn't malicious. It was kind of. I thought it was humorous. Apparently, humor gets missed in translation on Twitter, right? Because there's no sarcastic kind of button and this and that. But when we talk about sports, I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about sports media. We're talking fantasy football. But I know you're a big Mets fan. You got that whole New York thing. I mean, the Bills and the Sabres, I think, are that team. So you're not like the Rangers Islanders type of fan, but you kind of got the Buffalo Sabres. You're down to earth, you know, that hometown, you know, working hard, blue chip kind of guy there. But if you're coming in the ninth inning to close out a ball game for the New York Mets, what is that music? What is that intro song that's going to come down from the bullpen all the way down to the mound? What do we got going?
So, one, I can't top Edwin Diaz's theme song with the trumpet and everything. Can't top that. But I've always said, if I was a baseball player, my walk-up song would be The Spins by Mac Miller. Mac Miller is my favorite artist of all time. I have his pop back there. So I always would want to do one of his songs, but I don't know if The Spins would be a good closer song because it's supposed to be intimidating, and that's like a fun, upbeat kind of song. So I'll go with that, but I think I might, if I'm closing, I might have to. That might only last a little bit because then people are like, I'm not intimidated at all. I'm feeling good when he comes in.
I like it though. It's good times when you come to the mountain. So.
That's all we could bring. Because I can't throw hard at all, so I got vibes and that's it.
Nice. How did you get into sports? Were you involved with sports as a child? Did you play? We know your favorite teams. Tell us, what kind of sports you played growing up, and what were some of your players that kind of inspired you?
So it's funny that so many people now know me for football, but growing up, I grew up in New York City, so one, not a whole lot of opportunities to play football or to watch football. Like, most high schools don't have football teams. Most colleges, like my college, did not have a football team. So I was always a NFL fan, but the NFL and football were, as a child, were kind of number 3 to me. Like, baseball was my first love. Played baseball since I'm like 7 years old. Played it throughout high school. Basketball I got into a little bit later. Played that throughout high school. Mets fan, Knicks fan, unfortunately at times, but yeah, baseball was really my first love, and like David Wright was my favorite player growing up. I also really like Alfonso Soriano. Then in basketball, Melo, Starbury, all of those guys. I was always, though, since a young age, a big sports fan, and I started playing baseball when I was like 6 years old. And even as a kid, like, I loved playing sports, but I think even more than that, I loved like watching sports, and even more than that, I loved the discussion about sports and the debate about sports. So, when I realized that, like, yeah, I'm way too small to ever actually be a pro athlete, when I had the idea that, or the realization that, like, talking about sports is a potential career plan as well, I kind of put all my eggs in that basket, because I was like that kid in like middle school that was like the super fan. Like, everyone liked sports in my school, but like they were like more like casual kid fans, and I was like the super one collecting cards, and people would always ask me like what I thought about players and stuff, and I guess it was a good preparation for the career path I ultimately chose. But as a kid, all my folders and notebooks and everything were athletes. Like, I've just always been sports obsessed.
Nice. Diving more into the personal and the career aspect too. Tell us about a decision that changed the trajectory of your life.
The easy one is deciding to move out to LA and pursue this opportunity at the NFL Network. It says easy now, but at the time it was one of the hardest decisions of my life, because I'm from New York City. So people think like big city and stuff like that, but I wasn't, there's 2 different New York cities. There's like who lives in Manhattan and Brooklyn, the transplants. And then like I'm from Queens. Like I'm from a neighborhood where a lot of people, you just stay in that area. And if you leave, you move to Jersey or something like that. So like I grew up in the same neighborhood my whole life. And when I interviewed for the NFL, I had thought that it was in Manhattan. Like, I walked by the NFL office every day on my way to work, and then I found out it was in LA, and it was a big decision because I had an on-air position at my previous job, but it was like I had taken it as far as it was going to go, but I was then giving up my everyday on-air, reps and slot to go behind the scenes at NFL Network with zero guarantee that I would ever get another on-air opportunity. But I just kept weighing the options and being like, I think I took it as far as I could here. maybe it doesn't work out at all, but if I don't take this opportunity, I'll probably regret it. And then luckily my now wife was on board with doing the move, and that was all I needed. And it was a big, tough adjustment at first. And those first couple of years where I really wasn't doing anything on air, I was fully behind the scenes. I was like, did I make a big mistake? And did I? And I hit a low point where I was like, I don't think this is gonna happen for me, and I just want to move back and be with my family and friends and everything I know and love. And then the pandemic hit, and everything kind of changed. And I am very grateful now, looking back, that I stuck with it. And I talk about it a lot. That I think everyone in this industry thinks if I work hard, I'll get where I want to be. And obviously, you have to work hard. But I think of it as like working hard is a prerequisite. You're never going to get where you want to be if you don't work hard. But working hard is not enough. And to me, I think a superpower that myself and many others in this industry have is perseverance. You need to, when you get kicked down and you get told no and you get rejected and you don't get the job or anything like that you thought you were going to get, you need to be able to continue going and continue working hard. And I think that is ultimately what gets you where you want to be. But I look back at all those years and I'm like, I wasn't ready for the opportunity. If I got it when I had wanted it, I probably would have failed. So I look at it as like that was a life-changing opportunity for me. But even that opportunity and that chance took 2 or 3 years to really play out. So that's why I said it's an easy answer now looking back. But at the time, it was a very, very hard one to figure.
Kind of expanding upon that, that journey of you when you just got to California, you're working behind the scenes, you've transitioned into on-camera work as well. Across that entire journey, what are the biggest changes that you've seen now versus then in the industry?
Well, Fantasy Points, shout out to Graham Barfield, who at the time was the editor at the NFL Network. And my first season there, he was like, "Why are you not doing more work for us?" And he gave me an weekly article. And then my second year there, he gave me another weekly article, and then allowed me to start doing some player stories. So shout out to Graham Barfield, my guy. Hope you're doing well in Colorado right now. But the biggest change for me is my on-air, not personality, because I feel like I've always brought the same kind of personality, but my on-air presence. I project better than I used to. I used to be kind of timid and quiet and shy, because I think people get this sense when they like watch me that I'm like this loud, boisterous guy, and I'm not in real life. Like I'm kind of quiet. If you get to know me, then I can talk a whole lot. But I'm kind of a quiet dude, and when I first meet new people and stuff, and I think getting over that anxiety and shout out to another guy, Jerry Matalone, who's been like a mentor and a coach to me. He has really helped me take my on-air presence and my game, I would say, to another level. And that's why I say, like, I look back now and I'm like, I thought because I knew sports so well and I had what, I think my takes and stuff have kind of stayed the same because I had this sports knowledge a few years ago. I thought I was ready, but I needed to really hone in on my craft more. And to me, I think that is the biggest difference. And it's reps. Like, I tell people that all the time. Like, the best thing you could do in this industry is just get as many reps as you possibly can.
Yeah.
I feel that. I'm a very timid, quiet person myself. I almost say that with a straight face. Almost say it with a straight face. At what point did you decide, I'm going to go for it? Sports media, that is for me. Was it in college? You're like, you know what? It's media or nothing at this point.
It wasn't. So in college was the first time I ever realized that it was a possibility. Like, I did not go to college with this in mind. I was like, I'm going to become a business major. Took a couple of Econ 101 and 102 classes, realized I absolutely hated it. And in my second semester, I just tried a journalism class, and I liked it. And I was like, hey, I could do this with sports journalism as well. But my college, we didn't offer any sports media programs. So I just did regular media and journalism classes, and then I started writing and covering my college's sports teams. And that's when I first had the idea, like, maybe this could be something. But then you graduate and you realize how hard it is to get jobs in this industry. And for years, I was doing regular journalism, like covering community meetings and like very small time. but it helped me become a better writer. It helped me learn. It helped me become a better interviewer and think of better questions to ask. And it also just made me more comfortable, like walking up to people who I don't know and introducing myself and being like, hey, I want to ask you a bunch of questions and write about it. Because that's could be a very daunting task when you're a 22-year-old fresh out of college. But when I was in college, myself, Frank Stamfel, who now is the host of Fantasy Baseball Today, the CBS Fantasy Baseball podcast, and a friend of ours, who was in web design, was like, let's try to make our own fantasy sports website. And that is when I was like, I always want this to be a side project for me. And if ideally this could become a career, great. But like, I kind of viewed it as like, one, fantasy is my passion, but also two, it's an avenue to get into sports media that at that time wasn't as saturated as it is now. And so I just kind of stuck with that. And I always, no matter what my job was, I always had a side gig of some sort where I was doing fantasy and a lot of it was just for free, writing and podcasting on my own time. But I always, once I realized that was a option, even though at the time there was very, very, like, it was like, if you don't work at like RotoWire or CBS, good luck finding a gig in this industry. That's clearly has changed now, but I decided then, once I realized that it was an option, that like, yeah, this is something I want to stick with and see through.
That start to that journey, I think that really resonates with Tara, who had a very similar start going through that sports media programming through school, trying to find those jobs after, and maybe finding a lot of people going that path, finding another way of making income out of that, because like you said, the jobs are not necessarily there. But now it's time. Speaking of the whole media thing, one of the best parts of media is movies. And I got a question for you, Florio. Are you ready? Do you want to play a game?
Yes, but if it's about movies, I can already guarantee you I'm going to let a lot of people down.
This is basically going to be, has Florio seen it? The Florio Film Festival, combining with the NFL draft, with a little bit of a smash and pass kind of flavor to it. So we're going to go through some of the greatest fictional football players of all time, and you're going to let me know if you would draft them or not. And of course, if you
disappoint so many,
I know it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be so gloriously bad. It's going to be fantastic for television. That being said, there's a few pretty easy ones here that I'm sure you've seen time and time again. So I'm not too worried about that, if you've seen these guys or not. So there we go. We're going to start off with 101 here. Quarterback Willie Beeman of the Miami Sharks. Smash or pass?
What movie is he from?
That would be Any Given Sunday.
Yep. I don't think I've seen it. I'm going to say draft because you said he's the 101, and I know that's an insanely popular movie. But I feel like I've already disappointed the masses with this one.
It's all right. We've got ourselves our Anthony Richardson type player that can only code ceiling or floor, so to speak, when it comes to the quarterback position. But now you don't like that floor? You want a more traditional passer? How about Shane Falco of the Replacements there out of the Washington Sentinels program? Smash or pass?
I've seen this movie. I would smash. I don't know if he's as good as the previous quarterback that was available, but I do enjoy this movie, and I would take it.
He's got heart.
Right.
He's got heart.
He's got heart. He knows what it's like there. He's a former big-time college recruit there. I think he came out of Ohio State at one point there. So now we're going to look at one of the more electric playmakers as a pass catcher here out of Arizona, Rod Tidwell. Show me the money, Florio. Are you smashing or passing on Rod Tidwell?
Junior, I'm passing. He is, look, he's a good actor. I highly doubt he is anything athletic compared to a wide receiver.
Well, that said, it's probably good because I was going to pull up him from radio too, and I don't think you would have drafted him in radio. Now, 104, we need to go to a correctional institute here. The mean machine here, Earl Maggett at running back.
Drafting all day. First, this is one of those football movies that I've seen many a times. And I mean, he was, not only was he so cool in the movie, but like his spin move and everything, no one could get a hand on him. So I'm touching him. I'm drafting him, I mean.
All right, well, we got another. We got another running back coming out of the ESU program, the ESU Timberwolves. We got ourselves Darnell Jefferson.
I can't tell you a single thing about this guy.
Well, man, you got to watch it. This is one of my favorite football movies of all time. It's from the program. We're going to have a few guys coming on to the show a little bit later here from this draft, from the program. Dynamic offensive playmaker there, came in, took the job as a freshman. Now turning our attention here to another running back from any given Sunday. You may know him with his pant leg higher than the other pant leg, but we've got ourselves Julian Washington, running back, Miami Sharks.
I feel like I'm gonna draft this guy. I know nothing about the movie. I need to watch the movie. But the pant leg thing, I feel like the movie wouldn't have a guy have a uniform that stands out unless he's like a legit playmaker.
Well, his career trajectory has been an interesting one. From this football star here, he had a little bit of a rap career way back when, and now he's with NCIS there doing a little bit of the movies there. So he's had a pretty interesting career so far. Now, we got to go to the defensive side of the ball with Becky, the Icebox O'Shea from the Giants, from the Little Giants childhood program. One of my favorites. Tara, I know you love the Little Giants. Are you drafting the Icebox?
Yes.
Me.
Yes.
Yes.
Tara, are
It's
you?
the
'Cause I
iPad.
am.
Yes, we will draft them.
The Little Giants, another football movie that I've seen. Like, I've either seen these movies like a bunch or I haven't seen them at all.
Well, we're going back to the program here with a once upon a time Heisman type finalist here in Joe Kane, quarterback ESU.
He's a Heisman finalist. I feel like I have to draft him.
He does, but hey, you got to do your research on him because there's some red flags there in his personal life that may affect where you're selecting him. Now we're going to go
like Johnny Manziel.
He might have a little bit redder. He's got a bad family history there. We're not going to hold that against him. But the next quarterback, I mean, he's a family man. He's like the Chris Winkie before Chris Winkie. It's Paul Blake from the Texas State Armadillos. And we're going to throw in Andre Krim, defensive line for the same Armadillo squad.
2 for 1. How can I pass on that? I mean, you're giving me value here. I got to take it.
You know what? Paul Blake, he was just sitting there on the farm. He had a little bit of eligibility left. The recruiters came. They brought him in as like a 40-year-old quarterback. And then Andre Krim, he's like a professor there at Texas State who also had some eligibility. So can't go wrong with Sinbad here on your team no matter where you want to go. Now we got to focus on the offensive line with good old Billy Bob from the West Cannon Coyotes.
I mean, 1, his jersey number. 2, the size of him. I feel like I draft this guy. He's probably like the crazy lineman who's like slamming beer cans off his head or something like that before games. But during the game, I want this guy blocking for my quarterback.
All right. Well, do you think you can have him? Because we've got the next guy up here, defensive lineman Steve Latimer from the ESU program. There are some serious red flags around this prospect.
I want him because anyone who's going to paint their face like that, I want rushing the quarterback on my team. I don't want him coming after my quarterback. So I'm going to just take him to ensure the health and safety of my signal caller.
All right, our next prospect, he's a tweener, also from the Little Giants, running back, linebacker combination, Spike Hammersmith.
No, I'm not drafting him. He had a bad attitude. He got laid out by the icebox. I'm going to let someone else take him.
All right, perhaps one of Tara's favorite quarterback prospects out of T.C. Williams High School, Sunshine Ronnie Bass.
I'm taking him. I want him and his cannon on my team.
Yes.
All right,
yes.
Well, our next prospect, we're going a little bit older school here. We're going to Richmond High with Quentin Jefferson, and he knows all about the fast times.
I have no idea. Do you guys think I should want to draft this guy?
Well, he was a big deal in high school. I don't know if he ever made anything of himself after that.
What movie was this?
Fast Times at Richmond High.
I didn't see it.
Me neither.
That's
so I'm
all
gonna
right.
pass.
All right, we're passing on him. We're going to go back to T.C. Williams High School with the lovely one himself, Louis Elastic, offensive line.
I'm taking him. 1, not only because he's ginormous and can protect my quarterback, but 2, he's also like friends with Corey Matthews and Sean Hunter, and I grew up a huge Boy Meets World fan, so I'm taking him.
Plus, he's got that Joe Thomas diet now, man. The dude is cut. Now. He is cut. Next up, Bobby Boucher from the South Central Louisiana State University. You know this one.
How can I not? I mean, he made them national championship contenders alone, single-handedly. His mama might not like it, but I'm drafting him.
All right. Speaking of mamas, this man and his wife produced NFL talent years later. It's put your children to bed and the big dogs go out to eat. It's Alvin Mack out of the ESU Timberwolves. His son plays in the NFL currently.
Yeah, I'm taking him because he has good genes, so why not?
Well, speaking of good genes, the next player could be confused for a vampire. He's a quarterback out of Johnstown High School via Serbia. He is Stefan Djordjevic, cornerback. Yes, that is a young Tom Cruise.
That caught me up. What movie is this?
That is from the movie All the Right Moves.
I've never seen it, but I feel like I would draft him. He's got like an attitude, and that's what I like in a cornerback.
Well, quarterbacks with attitudes are great, but we all know special teams play a big deal. We need ourselves a kicker. How about Lucy Draper from Texas State?
Sure.
That's Kathy Ireland as a kicker in the movies.
I mean, she's kicking in the rain here, it looks like. So clearly she has a leg that they trust. I would draft that.
All right, next up, he may be a liability on defense, also from TC Williams High School. We have Alan Bosley.
Passing. If your introduction says he's a liability on defense, why would I want to draft that? I'm not going to draft him.
And our final
sign him as an
also,
undrafted free agent afterwards. Good character guy.
Good character guy. He's a good team guy. Good team guy. Team first. Now, a guy who, with all the recent stuff going on with the Detroit Lions and the whole gambling ring and all that other fun stuff going on, this next player has a little bit of a red flag issue. He is perhaps the last Boy Scout here. Jimmy Dix, quarterback, LA Stallions.
What movie is this?
The Last Boy Scout. Bruce Willis, Damon Wayans.
Yeah, I have not seen this one. I don't even know if I've ever heard of this one. I'm going to pass just because you said he comes with off-the-field concerns, and I don't want my quarterback leading the team to have off-the-field concerns.
Well, with that, we've just finished our smash and pass, and we're going to go back to our regular schedule programming. Tara, kick us off back to our regular schedule.
Let's go back to and let's dive into interviews that you've done. Was there an interview that changed how you viewed someone compared to what you viewed them heading into the interview?
That is a good question. It's fresh in my mind because someone tweeted me it today, but I once had the privilege of interviewing David Wright, and I didn't know I was going to interview him. It was kept a secret by my co-host Scott Engel until the box popped up with David Wright there. And growing up, he was always my favorite athlete, and I always said like he's a nicer dude off the field than he is even a good of an athlete on the field. And getting to do that interview with him only really cemented that for me. I've never had a negative interview experience. It's happened where like people just won't get back to me, or like I had the privilege of covering some MLB games back in the day where players would be like, yeah, I'll come back after I hit, and then like they just go and start joking around with their teammates, and I'm like, yeah, they're never coming back to talk to me. But I've never had an interview where I came away being like, I did not like that person. And I don't want to name names. There's one person in the media who I once brought on the show, not fantasy, but just NFL media, and they were not too nice and were kind of cold and acted as if doing that interview was a disruption of their day. And I was like, you agreed to do this days ago. But besides that, I could tell you guys off air too, but besides that, I've never had a negative interview experience. Sorry if that was not the answer you were hoping for.
No, that's it. I mean, when you get into sports media, especially someone like Wright, where you've got that little fandom kind of combined, it's always one of those kind of like, do you really want to meet your heroes type moments, right? You're like, okay, please don't be rude. Please don't be everything that I don't have you built up to be on this platform. And when they come out to be better than you even anticipated, I mean, that's a whole lot. Or someone you like, oh man, this guy looks cold on TV. He looks like, I mean, we've had these guys where they have an intimidating type look to them. Then you get them behind on the camera and they're like, well, this is not what I expected. This guy is actually pretty darn cool. I mean, I'm sure you get a lot of that, especially now with the NFL, doing some player interviews, that kind of stuff on the NFL fantasy. I mean, I'm sure those guys coming through the studio, you may have had a different perception of them prior to actually meeting them. And it's like, oh, wow, this guy's nothing like I would have assumed. Now, when you're doing these interviews, do you bring up sneakers at all? Do you talk shoes? Do you talk a good foot game with people? Because my understanding is you bring the shoe game with you wherever you go.
Appreciate that. I don't. So it's something that I've never brought it up in interviews, and maybe you know what? That's going to be my biggest takeaway from right now is like I should start doing that when I interview people. What the shoes have helped me with a lot is create conversations before the interview, or make friends, because a lot of the times like if I see someone with a nice pair of shoes or something, I'll be like, yo, I love your sneakers. Like, and then like, oh, it just creates like a little natural conversation. And then before you know it, now we're talking about something else. And like, we're comfortable with one another or something like that. It's funny you say that about the shoes, because if you knew me growing up and stuff, you'd probably be like, Florio never had nice shoes, because I never really did. So now I'm in a position where like I'm able to buy them for myself, and I definitely do, because growing up I always wanted, you know, like I had friends or people I went to school with that were big sneakerheads, and growing up in New York City, it's such a big part of the culture, but like I never really had the capability of just going out and buying Jordans when they dropped. So I've kind of, the last few years, have really built up my sneaker collection. And honestly, like 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't own 90% of the pairs of shoes that you see me with on the network. But I'm happy that you brought it up, because it's something that I try hard to do. And like when I am putting outfits together, it begins and ends with the sneaker. Everything else has to kind of fit around the sneaker.
So that brings me up to my follow-up question. Is it you or your significant other? Who's got more shoes? Who's got the better shoe game?
Me. My wife Nicolette she beats me with like sandals and slides and flats and all of that stuff, but sneakers and just shoes, it's me. I have a closet now that like the whole bottom part of it is just sneakers, and my like the shoes that you see me wear in NFL Live are not in my home. Like they are at work in my locker. They do not touch the street. Like they just touch the studio, and that's it. Like I want them to stay as nice and as clean as they possibly can for as long as they possibly can. But it is me. But my wife, Nicolette, who's the best, is super supportive of my hobby, and like my last couple of birthdays and stuff, she's surprised me with some nice shoes. So honestly, probably like more than a few pairs that I have were gifts from her. So I guess that she gets a huge assist for that, but the answer would be me.
Nice. I love that. I love that they're in studio. They're the cool work shoes, and they never leave. They're pristine.
They're not. I wore one of them once to a bar, and I was like, "What am I doing? Like, I want to just get these off right now."
That's on PTSD. Like, no. Oh man. So we talked earlier about sports or fantasy football and learning about how, yes, it takes hard work, but it also takes perseverance. Is there anything else that you have learned through fantasy football or fantasy sports in general?
Networking. And to me, networking in the right way. Like, if you're only reaching out to someone to be like, hey, can you get me a job? They're not going to get you that job. But what I was doing, I would pick the brains of a lot of people who are higher than me in the industry. And I'm very lucky to have people who, I don't know, just like kind of took me under their wing. Like Scott Engel, who I still work with to this day, hired me when I was fresh out of college to be an intern at his site. And now we're hosting a show on SiriusXM every weekend together. And Nando DeFino, who is the editor of The Athletic now, me and my buddy Frank Stanfield used to record videos, which when you said you went back on the internet, I was very fearful that you found some of my videos from like 10 years ago, which I hope don't exist anymore, but were terrible, and you're shaking your head, which makes me a little nervous here. But we used to record these videos in his basement and then send them over to Nando, who would critique us and give us points and stuff like that. So it wasn't me being like, hey, can you get me a job? I deserve a job. It was me being like, how can I get better? Is there any advice you have for me? And asking those kinds of questions, because if you get close with someone like that, who they see, in my opinion at least, that you're genuinely interested in becoming better at what you do, not just getting a job. When jobs open up for those people, you're going to be the first ones they think of, in my opinion. That's why I said earlier, like, I don't like to attack people and stuff. I do not understand the mindset of being like, I'm going to just be combative on Twitter and stuff. Twitter is, yes, it's a great tool in this industry, but it's also such a networking tool, and it's almost like you're putting yourself out there for a job interview that's not going on, because my opinion is like, if I see someone that's constantly belittling and attacking other people's work, why would I ever want to work with that person myself? So I think the biggest advice is present yourself out there as a team player and someone that people will want to work with, and just as someone that just wants to get better at what they do. You're not you're not reaching out for relationships because you think they can get you something or somewhere in this industry. Like, the people who I had an hour conversation with a college student yesterday on the phone, and it was such a reminiscent moment for me because I was like 10 years ago, I spoke to Dave Richard from CBS Sports and DJ Short from RotoWire, Roto World at the time, now NBC Sports Edge, for a college paper. And now I'm like, to me, it was a full circle moment, but like someone like that who is just like, I want to work in this industry and like, how can I get there? And like, I'm much more open to reaching out to someone like that than it's someone just sends me a random message like, hey, can you get me a job at the NFL?
Yeah, completely agree. You mentioned a few names there. Relationships are so critical, especially in this industry. Are there any others that you wanted to mention? Any others that have helped you along the way?
Yeah, so I know I mentioned Frank a few times. We legitimately were friends like since we're 14 years old, since before either of us knew we wanted to do it. So our climb, he's someone that I owe a lot of success to. Adam Ronis, who's now with Fantasy Alarm, is someone that kind of took me under his wing. And then at the NFL Network, like Marcus Grant has been like a mentor to me in ways that I could never thank him for enough. It's just finding. There's a lot of people, and I know I'm forgetting some, and I apologize, but you're never gonna. No one, I don't think, is ever gonna make it on their own. And if you do, kudos, but that's not the path that many are gonna get to go on. So there's been countless Jake Seeley, countless amount of people who. Not everyone is gonna hire you for a job or something like that, but Jake Seeley invited me into the Flex League when I was, no one, like, I was just like trying to get exposure and network and stuff, and to put me in a league where with people who are doing this for a living was like a huge moment for me. And so anything like that, again, I know I'm drawing blanks, but there's more people than I probably could have time to thank. A lot of people, and I just think that's the way that people should kind of climb, and you find your group. But, you always should be looking to network and make better connections, I would say.
For sure.
Well, I just want you to know that Marcus Grant set the over-under at 1.5 for those fictional football players that you'd actually know when they came up on the show.
You mentioned Florio Film Festival. That's something that me and him have started this year because he was like, you need to see more movies. So, like, we're just going to make it a part of the off-season podcast where every week we put it on hiatus for a couple of weeks for the draft, but every week I have to watch and discuss a movie that I have not seen.
It's funny that you mentioned it. So one of the fun little videos I was doing there was I was doing like a preview for a primetime preview, but I was then kind of linking it together with a video of the 90s or 2000s and kind of comparing the two. This game reminds me of the original Mario Brothers game. Looks good, sounds good, it's going to be horrible. Something like that, and kind of breaking it down and such. So I know you've got Speed, Terminator 2. I think he's introduced you to a couple of those action movies of the 90s. So that's why I thought it would be a little bit fun to talk about these fictional football players of the 90s on the show. But you know what? It's been a blast talking with you, Michael, throughout this show. I'm glad at least one Florio doesn't have me blocked on social media, so that makes me feel better about myself. Well, hey, you had an opportunity. I came on with you and Marcus there. I think it was last off season there on the NFL Fantasy podcast. So I didn't get blocked after that. So obviously we're doing something all right. Tara, what do you got going on here in the next couple of weeks?
Drafts. Next couple of weeks, man. Probably a show every single day next week. Yeah, and lots of stuff covering, previewing the draft. I'm super excited to dive into that, and then after that, talk all of the fantastic, hopefully, cross our fingers, landing spots.
Well, you guys asked me a lot of questions. Before I go, I want to what do you guys, one move that you think is going to shake up the draft next week?
Matt, do you want to go?
I like to go crazy. I like to mess with things here, and I want to throw a whole loop into it. I want to go I've kind of mentioned everything I feel it's going to be Bryce Young going at 1. And then I think Anthony Richardson could very well go at 2, or the Texans. We talked about this on the show the other day. If the Texans don't have that quarterback, if they truly have their heart set on Bryce Young, they could trade back from 102, or they could go defense here, because we know DeMeco Ryans is looking for that difference maker on the defensive side of the ball, with ideas and hopes of Caleb Williams next season. So I think that could be where it gets really interesting in the draft if Bryce Young is selected first overall. After that, all bets are off, because we've heard Will Levis, the scouts like him better than the media, probably because the dude drinks mayonnaise in his coffee and eats bananas with the peel on, which is an automatic double red flag for me right there. So I think if Bryce Young goes 101, that could change the whole dynamic of this draft. And every mock draft that we've done could be completely thrown out if the Texans truly have their heart set on Bryce Young and don't want to settle for the next best quarterback. Tara.
Oh, I hope that does not happen. Because I'm in Houston and I'm not a Texans fan. I'm not originally from here, but oh my, I can't I can't go through another quarterbackless season. They need something here. For me, so I agree with you. I think a lot of people are missing that Jahmyr Gibbs is truly elite. And are saying, no, he's a second round. No, I think that, once Bijan comes off the board, I really believe that, the GMs see this kind of tier gap between him, Gibbs, and everybody else. So I think it's going to happen like within several picks after he goes. And for me, where I kind of envision him going, I think that it's going to happen for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that they truly are done and ready to part ways with Joe Mixon. And I think that Gibbs would be just a fantastic addition to their offense. We look at the way that P. Ryan was used last year. The pass catching upside that Gibbs has is going to flow perfectly with Joe Burrow. So, and I know people don't think that he has those 3 down back capabilities, but he truly does. He's not that tiny kind of back. He's not Devon Achane kind of back. So I truly believe that Gibbs falling in the first round and going to Cincinnati would be just an amazing combo.
So Michael, one last thing. What do you got cooking here this week? What can people catch you here? Draft week. What is Florio working on?
So I'll be having some more draft content come out on Rotoballer today. My article previewing 5 receivers I like that aren't the big 4 that I think are going to go in the first round. So like Marvin Mims, Michael Wilson, Jalen Hyatt, a couple others, an in-depth scouting report. Next week, I'm going to have the rest of the receiver write-up coming out. So like the guys who are left after the first 2 articles I wrote. I might do a mock draft 2.0 depending on how much I think stuff might get shaken up. If I don't think it'll be much, I'll just leave out the 1 mock. Then literally right after the draft, me and Marcus Grant are going to record a podcast, so you'll be able to get that. I have a new show. I introduced Florio's football show. Leave a 5-star review, please. But that's just kind of like my own project, so I'll have some draft content for that coming out. And then I know me and Marcus and some other people at the NFL Network, the week after the draft, we'll have some fun post-draft fantasy content coming out. Hopefully some video stuff, maybe some articles. So certainly a lot you could get there. I always say the best place, just follow me on Twitter at Micheal F. Florio. You kind of get it all in one. No longer verified, but still going strong over there.
All right. Well, with that all being said, make sure to take a look at the Florio Football Show. Leave that 5-star review. And that is it for this edition of the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast Behind the Grind, presented by the Fantasy Points Media Group. For Michael, for Tara, for myself, we'll see you next week. Take care.